Hello viewer, welcome to KSP to Mars. I'm Lorenzo and today we have episode 54. Gee, that's a lot already. Today we are looking at true future technologies. This is something that's theorized about. It's not ever been prototyped in the real world at all. We are looking at fusion power. Of course, fusion power has been sort of prototyped and done, but well, I digress. Fusion power. We have here the Prometheus, the guy that stole the fire from the gods. I think it's a appropriate name for a fusion powered ship. Now with the last technology node we've unlocked a lot of stuff from KSP Interstellar, so I'm going to try and explain this stuff to you. It's wonderfully complicated, at least a lot more so than add a fuel tank, add an engine and it works. Now to illustrate things a little bit clearly, I'm going to remove these honking heat radiators so you can have a look at what's going on. So here we have it. I'm going to take it component by component because it is quite a complicated system. We have here the DT Vista inertial fusion drive. DT stands for deuterium tritium. What it does, what it's supposed to do really, is shoot little balls of deuterium tritium fusion fuel out the back, and then a big honking laser ignites fusion. Now it's recently been in the news that this laser induced fusion has in fact been realized at the National Ignition Facility in America, so congratulations to those guys. But here in this setting we're doing it basically in the nozzle of a space engine. Some liquid fuel is injected with it to well, serve as reaction mass, and interestingly that means that the throttle setting, which obviously controls the throttle, also influences the specific impulse. At a very low throttle, obviously it has a low amount of thrust, but a very high specific impulse. Of a little bit of material is added to the fusion explosion really, and that means that a lot of energy goes into a little bit of material, high specific impulse, low thrust. Conversely, you can add a lot of fuel. The same amount from that explosion will then heat a larger amount of fuel, generating more thrust but less specific impulse. Interestingly enough, this drive thus always requires the same amount of electricity because the fusion that's generated is done by lasers, and those lasers don't care about the engine output. They always need 2.5 gigawatts, which is a lot of power. Now, step 2 then, of course, no, step 1A is of course the fuel. These drives use deuterium and tritium as fuel, and I will talk a little bit about how to get that later. We can get deuterium in these deuterium tanks from the VAB, but tritium, the VAB, only doles out very, very sparingly. It gives you a few units with each engine and a few units with each fusion reactor, but that's not enough to run it for a long time. So, power first. We need in total 5 gigawatts of power to, well, power these two engines. There we have this fusion reactor. Similar principle as the engines, we use deuterium and tritium to fuse in a reactor in a hot plasma, and that will make energy in this generator. Wonderful. So far so good. The problem though is that we need initiation energy for the fusion reaction. We can't start it cold. We need power to preheat the plasma, to charge the magnets, to, well, to initiate the fusion. Enter these two fission reactors. They don't need power to start up, they just run, and as long as they don't overheat they keep on running. So these guys, they're, well, respectable reactors in their own right. Let's have a look at their stats. Let's have a look. They are here. We are using the 2.5 meter reactor. They have been upgraded because of the new technology. They produce 1.5 gigawatts of thermal energy each. These generators, they are the low-tech generators, and this will steer our research for the coming episodes. They convert about 30% of that to electricity. So that will be a few megawatts of electricity, enough to confine the plasma, fuel that, and light the fusion reactor, which we have in our information panel over here. And that will generate a whopping, well, 2.2 gigawatts. So in total, it's less than these two fission reactors. This one is a lot lighter though. This weighs in at 9 mass, and this one is at 14. So this is more efficient. Same problem though, the inefficient generator doesn't take all that power and change it into enough electricity for these fusion drives. Now, the quick math kids among you have calculated that well, this doesn't give the display, that we will not in fact be generating the requisite 5 gigawatts of power for these engines. Fortunately, the generators have big capacitors, so we can use the engines in pulse mode. And I've tested this out, and this will work out to bursts of about 100 meters per second of delta V for this 120-ton monstrosity every few seconds. So not ideal, but definitely workable. Now, of course, your next question is going to be, then why the hell didn't you add like 5 more reactors and, well, power them all the time? They're heavy, but not so heavy. We have a class of larger reactor available. For instance, this one will produce 18 gigawatts straight out of the box. So just that one reactor would be enough. Problem is heat. We have now advanced reactors. We have upgraded fission reactors, entry-level fusion cores, and of course the fusion engines. Our generators are primitive. They take only a small percentage, about 30, and turn that into energy. Even worse, our radiators are primitive. Look at that. The huge heat radiator here radiates about 300 megawatts of power. If that were to be upgraded, this one will radiate 13 gigawatts of power, so then one would suffice. This is why you saw so many radiators before I removed them. We need that many just to not immediately overheat. They're not even enough to sustain all these reactors at full burst. So that's the second reason why we need to operate in burst mode. This is very much a first generation fusion ship. Not quite perfect yet, but it is a honkin' fusion ship, so that's good. Now, there's another reason why I'm using a combination of fission and fusion. I talked a little bit about deuterium and tritium already. The engines, as well as the fusion reactor, requires deuterium and tritium. Now, deuterium is easy. We just get that from the VAB. It's a special kind of water. It can be got from the ocean pretty easily. So here we have the deuterium tritium tank. I've added, oh, now I'm going to remove that accidentally. Let me add that back. This is what I do when I accidentally grab something. I hit delete and then I hit Ctrl Z. Saves me the effort of placing it back on the vehicle and just puts it back where it belongs. So we have this, oh, this is a lithium tank, bad example. This is the deuterium tritium tank here. And if I right click that, it won't let me do anything. And the developers of the KSP Interstellar mod have been a little bit mean. This has the potential to carry tritium, but doesn't do so out of the VAB. It does have a lot of deuterium, which is enough to, well, fuel the reactor for a while. But the tritium, apart from the bit they give you, a pittance really, you have to make. And for that you need fission reactors. You have the fission reactor here, and you supplement that with lithium, which I put in the canisters here. It's an option you get when you launch the ship. You say enable tritium breeding, and then that makes small amounts of tritium each day. So the plan here is to launch this high into space, into orbit, activate the fission reactors for the tritium breeding, and then when we need to, we have a docking port here and we have small docking ports on the sides. When we need to, we will use the fusion drives to go somewhere. Fortunately, this fusion reactor here can be completely shut down and then powered up again as long as we have power from the fission drives, and then that hopefully will give this ship a bit of longevity. Now, it's what I said, quite a complicated system. I think I worked it out pretty well in this design here. Although who's to say, maybe we're going to run out of one component a lot sooner than the others. One thing I want to do is take this to the moon, add a lander. I'm currently designing that. And then basically take this to the moon, have the lander pick up some surface samples, and then have it come back to Earth, obviously. So yeah, I think that about does it for the fusion drive explanation. Oh, there's one more thing. These things, when on, emit a huge amount of neutrons, and they will kill any Kerbal within 2 kilometers, apart from the ones in the ship. The reason the one in the ship, that will have shielding, but if you fire this like in orbit next to a space station, they're gonna die. Out of the box they have a radiation safety where it just won't turn on if that's the case, but you can of course disable that if your intention is to fry the Kerbals. So yeah, I think it's about time we slap some rockets under this to, well, lift it out of the atmosphere and give this a test flight. So I'm going to do that, and I'll see you on the launch pad with the Prometheus for its maiden voyage. And here we are on the launch pad, the Prometheus covered in one big shroud with a simple asparagus methane booster under that. This should suffice to get it into space, not into orbit though, and then in space we can test out the fusion prototype really. Now I didn't bring any Kerbals because it's the first flight of any fusion powered ship, so the likelihood of disaster is high. We can have a look at our resources window, which is growing large and complicated. We have, of course, monopropellant, electric charge, and megajoules. Megajoules are like the alternative power system KSP Interstellar uses, and a megajoule per second equals a megawatt. So 60,000 megajoules of storage means that we can run a 1 gigawatt battery for 60 seconds, for a minute. Well, we need 5 gigawatts for our fusion drives. We're generating, if we look here in the electricity tab, we're generating 1.5, so we get about 30 seconds, 20 to 30 seconds of burst propulsion, and then we have to stop and wait. So we're going to launch, and then we will enable the tritium breeding and all that good stuff. But first let's get out of the atmosphere, because of course we can't very well light our fusion engines here and kill everyone in the KSC. Now, I wonder if this will have any controllability. I've designed it really quickly, so we might immediately spiral over and die, but I hope we will not. So here we go. Ooh, that does not look too steady. I'm going to throttle back a little bit. Too much acceleration surely isn't a good thing. It does look as though we are going to pitch over rather uncontrollably. I'm pressing the D key to turn back towards the center very, very hard, and it does seem as though that is something that's going to happen. I don't really know why this appears to be so unbalanced, but as long as we get into space, this controllability doesn't really matter. Oh, look at that, there's the first stage that can get out of here. It doesn't really matter as long as we get into space for a few minutes, so we can give this fusion engine a good test run. Now I have decided that these fusion engines, oh dear, falling over pretty hard here. I have decided that these fusion engines will be something of an expensive item. I'm not going to implement a whole cash money system, but I am going to try to minimize the use of them. So if this prototype does in fact reach orbit, we will be using it. You can count on that. So here we go. This is very, very unstable indeed. I might have to make this booster out of mainsails that have, of course, engine gimbaling, or install a little bit more control authority in the actual ship itself, because this booster, well, we're not spinning completely out of control, but I'm definitely not choosing where to go. If I had the choice of direction, I would definitely head the other way. Yeah, so anyway, let's go with it. We're going in a retrograde direction, pitched over at 45 degrees more or less, and at least we are well out of range of the KSC, so we can in a minute initiate the fusion drive without a bad conscience. Of course, the problem is, as long as we are in the atmosphere, we won't be able to deploy our heat radiators, so overheating might be an issue. We are carrying a lot of them, of the heat radiators, so that does also mean that apart from radiating the heat, obviously, they also have a heat capacity for storing excess heat. So that also means that, they can function as a sort of reverse batteries, giving us a little bit of buffer, so we can in fact run the reactors. Gee, this thing is really uncontrollable. I would have hoped to to expend most of this delta V heading upwards to space. It does not appear as though that is something that's going to happen. I did pepper the Prometheus with reaction wheels, but I think it's just too heavy. It's 120 tons after all, and that just makes it tip over and fall and be rather horrible. You know, we're at 40 kilometers. We are still going up. Let's have a look at the orbital display. Well, it doesn't predict us going any higher than this 42 kilometers. So maybe that's just going to have to be the altitude at which we test our nuclear drive. Problem with that is, of course, that there is still significant air resistance here. Yeah, we're at our apoapsis now, if we can call it that. So let's shut down this engine, blow the fairings, and see about using these engines. So I'm going to do the first burst now, firing the fusion drive, and you can see the megajoules are depleting, and this thing does not really control so well in the atmosphere as you might have imagined. So we can see now we are running on buffered power, and that is going to run out in just a bit. Fusion plasma cannot be contained. Well, shut the engine down before that, and now this will charge back up. Now what we have to do once this gets to space, and I have no illusions, don't worry, this is not getting to space, we have to do here the reactor, enable the tritium breeding. It doesn't have any influence on the power output, but it will make our fusion fuel for us, which of course is something that we need. Unfortunately though, this particular incarnation of the Prometheus is going to, well, it's going to burn really. It's going to be incinerated, crash, and be terrible. Well, we can use this opportunity to, well, time our bursts at any rate. If we look at the Kerbal Engineer though, at the vessel, we can see if we throttle up just a little bit, our delta V is 25 kilometers per second. If we throttle up more, like full throttle, maximum thrust, low ISP, we get still 20 kilometers per second. And if we function at like 25 throttle, we have 50,000 meters per second of delta V. At a thrust level of, again, this is at the thrust of 2.2 meganewtons still. So this really is a good engine. It will take us everywhere in the solar system, if only we can get it to orbit, at least to space. And what we really need to do is we are in dire need of upgrading our radiator technology, because with proper radiators we can just have a big honking reactor that can power this, and we can even use it for our planetary ascent. That unfortunately is something that's not quite possible now, because strapping on enough generators to power even one of these engines, and now I put two here, so that's maybe a little bit too greedy, but even one with the biggest generator, there's just not enough space on the rocket to fit enough radiators to get rid of the waste heat, because of the inefficient turbines, well, the inefficient generators, and of course the inefficient radiators most of all. So yeah, that is a problem. So let's try one more burst to see. Hey, we might be able to land this. Our terminal velocity is low, and our bursts are about 150 meters per second. So yeah, let's try that. Initiating the engine here. That's reducing the speed, but look at that. Our buffer is quickly running down. I'm going to cut it now. Please generate some power, generate some power, generate some power, so we can not explode and die. Here we go, thrusting. Yeah, one of them stopped. There we go. It's a big debris field. Well, that was sort of expected. What I'm going to try now is to just strap this thing to on the top of our, well, our go-to booster really, the big one. The big honking methane booster. And that will be a slideshow. But hopefully it's going to be a slideshow that will end with the Prometheus in space, where it can happily putter along on its pulsed fusion thruster. Gee, those words are nice. And here we have it on the launch pad, a big monstrosity and already quite slideshowy. Ooh, I wanted to send this unmanned again. Yeah, I'm going to send it unmanned. No, I'm going to send it manned. We have confidence. They have a fusion drive. They can surely save themselves when and if things go wrong. Head on and Dudgard, you are courageous. Wheeled the rocket out to the launch pad, intending an unmanned launch, but they just couldn't be kept away from the rocket. So we'll see, first of all, if it's stable off the pad. So here goes that. Well, that appears to go pretty well. 1 or 2 frames have rendered. And we're lifting off with a thrust to weight ratio of about 1.2. So not terribly much. Uh-oh, that does not look good. That does not look good. What is happening? Well, looks like they decided to leave a bit of the rocket behind. That's not a good launch strategy. You quite really need all of that. I am surprised how well this still appears to work though. It's not cartwheeling over immediately, it's just missing like a bit of it. However, this is not going to go well. I will revert this launch, because this is something that occasionally happens, and, well, I don't think it should. So, let me try that. Whoa! This happened upon reloading. That is quite remarkable. I think some demon got into construction that time. This looks like one of those physics demos that people in 2004 used to show off their marvelous computer. Look, there's the launch clamps over there. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to the space program this time round. I am going to, well, respawn these poor Kerbals. They did not deserve this. Right, see you when it's on the launch pad properly. So, here we go again. I think all the demons have been successfully banished and exorcised. Head-on and Dutker, though, they're very persistent. I took them out of the rocket once again, and this time I'm sure of it. But they snuck back in, so they must be really excited to go to space today. After all, they've died twice already. Right, so what we want to see here is whether this is stable off the pad, and then I will take care of the rest, because, well, as you can see, this is going to take a while. Let's have a quick peek at the F3 window. Well, no parts have remained behind this time, and at least for the first few seconds everything seems hunky-dory. I hope this gets, well, it won't get into orbit, since the payload is, well, 120 or 130 tons, as compared to the 40 to 50 that this launcher is rated to do. Wow, those are some big words there. But we're looking at about 7 to 9 kilometers per second of delta V, so not enough for orbit. I'm going to take a rather steep trajectory, so we have quite some time in space, allowing the fusion drive to kick in and, well, circularize and fix that suborbital trajectory into a nice orbital one. Well, and we do have to, because of course Haddon and Dutgard's third lives are at stake here. Yeah, I'm going to cycle through all the stages of this booster, and then I'll hopefully be in space and we can play with the fusion chip. So see you in a second or two. Right, here we are in space. The booster has suffered a bit of an uncontrolled disassembly, but we have a altitude that we can work with. We did throw away, well, exploded away a few kilometers per second of delta V, but we have an orbit with an apoapsis of 406 kilometers and a time to apoapsis of 2 more minutes. Hopefully we can somehow twist that into a, well, something that resembles a actual orbit. So let us go ahead and light the fusion engine after we orient the ship a little bit prograde so that we're not no longer tumbling. I don't know why the booster exploded. Maybe there were some clipping issues or something happened with the fairing. Everything was going well until, well, it exploded. So let's fire the engine. There we go, and that gives us some control authority. Wonderful. Well, remember that we are operating in pulsed mode. That means that we will run out of juice any second, but at least we have established our prograde heading, and we can, well, we can increase our speed gradually. So there we are, out of power, and this is a good opportunity to, well, wait and have it recharge and deploy our radiators, because for now the waste heat isn't so high, but that will increase. So I made an action group. I'm going to press 1, and that will hopefully pop out all these radiators. There we go. 6 huge radiators, serving to, well, prevent us from being cooked. This full tank has not been used due to the uncontrolled disassembly, so on the next pulse we will drop that. Now it's just a matter of waiting until our electricity recharges and then pulsing the engine. I am growing skeptical whether we are going to get up to orbital speed this way. I would have liked to use the remaining booster for that. Anyway, here we go with the engine. Decoupling this tank, that is useless to us. But our acceleration is pretty good actually while we're thrusting. So perhaps this is something that can work. So here we go, that was one more pulse, stopping that. And now for the next pulse we are going to actually check how much delta V it's going to give us. And we're going to keep a look at the apoapsis height. That is now at 407. We are almost at that altitude, and that is a little bit worrisome because, well, we're going to start falling back towards the planet, and that's of course something we don't really want. We want to float and enjoy our little fusion paradise. It does take a little bit longer than I was expecting to recharge this buffer, so our effective thrust is pretty darn low. And we do need to get like 3 more kilometers per second, 4 more actually, so yeah, I wonder if we're actually going to make it. If the booster had made it, I'm sure we would have made it. Here we go, throttling back up, and we're coming from 3.4 kilometers per second. Let's have a look at that now. 3.6, 3.7, so we have about 300 meters per second. Oh, and of course when this actually cuts out, one of them is going to cut out first, and that means that we go into a flat spin. So it's better to not let that happen. But we get about 300 meters per second per burst. That means we have about 10 bursts to go. And yeah, that's going to be very, very tight indeed if we can manage to make that. I hope so, because it's a beauty. This ship is nice. I like it. But yeah, we really do need more efficient power generation. If we do make it and we actually get into orbit, then the next mission for the next episode will be to attach a ship here, take that to the moon, and use it to, well, perform multiple moon landings. Wouldn't that be nice? Right, trying to maintain attitude, which is difficult, I have to say. The control authority on this ship is not great. Well, with the engines on it's great, but with the engines off, yeah, not so much. So stop it. So we're almost up to 4 kilometers per second, but we are definitely starting to go down towards the planet again. Let's see how this works if I time warp. Time warp, yeah, that goes fine, so I can use it. Although I'm not sure it actually goes 10 times as fast when I time warp, so I'm not going to time warp again. Perhaps that's a waste of time, ironically enough. This pulse thrusting, it will be fine for injection trajectories, but for these time-sensitive maneuvers it's a big headache, because I don't think we're actually going to make it. Yeah, no. And we got into a little bit of a spin again, so yeah, that's not very good. I'm going to write this out and see what I can make of it, maybe by doing a few bursts pure upwards. And, well, I'll check back with you as soon as something interesting happens. And, of course, with the result. So, here we are a few minutes later. And I think, from assessing the situation, you will be able to tell what event is imminent. Yes, that is the fiery entry and destruction and demise of Haddon, Tudgard, and the Prometheus. Well, I really can't worry too much about the Kerbals. They did sneak in unauthorized. The Prometheus, though, is a mixed blessing, or, well, not a blessing at all. It's a very double story, because on the one hand the design was perfect. If the booster hadn't fallen apart, which I think might have been a residual tiny demon in the rocket, then this would have worked perfectly, because we're at 6 kilometers per second. We need just like 2 or 3 more bursts, and then we would have attained orbital velocity. We are not. There go our radiators, and that will cause our fusion core to quickly overheat, so let's shut that one down. And yeah, we can't shut down the fission cores, but, well, they won't have time to overheat anyway. We lost one of the engines. We can fire this one for some spin. Anyway, what I was going to say is this would have worked pretty well had the booster managed to finish its final stages. So with this fiery entry, I'm going to end the episode, because I spent a fair amount of time explaining the whole fusion system to you, and hopefully you are as excited as I am for the possibilities this will open. For the next episode, I'm going to, well, try and get one of these in orbit and do something fancy with it. Let's see if we can enjoy this spectacle from the internal view. Let's see. well, there's not really a lot to see here. Ooh, the other guy does. Ooh, and it's almost just them. Well, they died due to G-force damage. And then the whole ship exploded. Too bad. Fortunately, all this nuclear fuel and reactants and stuff, that pretty much happened over the ocean. So no planetary disaster. Only 2 stowaway Kerbals have died. That's a pity though. Check back tomorrow for some in-space operation of the Prometheus. Possibly Mark II, not just the same old Prometheus. We've so far exploded 3 fusion engines. I think that's fair for a prototype program. And hopefully tomorrow we will get our the next 2 engines, number 4 and 5, into a safe orbit so that they may be used in a useful manner. This was Lorenzo. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you tomorrow where we will play on with these advanced technologies. Goodbye.